guys, I'm Pixel Dan, and this is a review of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Revoltech Michelangelo. That's right, we're moving right along with our look at the incredibly cool, highly detailed and articulated Revoltech Ninja Turtles action figures. So let's go ahead and take a look at the party dude, Michelangelo. As you can see, he comes in that same style window box packaging that we've seen for the other turtles in this Revoltech lineup so far. His box is, of course, orange to match his preferred bandana color, and the window there fully showcases the action figure as well as all of his accessories right there within the box. Flipping that box around to the back side, we get a look at some of the different poses that you'll be able to pull off with this figure, as well as a look at all four of the Revoltech action figures right there at the bottom of the box. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at Mikey outside of the packaging. Now, I've already taken a look at both Leonardo and Raphael, so a lot of the stuff is very similar here as far as articulation and everything goes, but one of the things that's really neat between all of these figures is they are unique sculpts. So there's really nothing that seems to be completely shared between them, except for some minor pieces here and there. So Michelangelo's body type is sized a little bit differently than the rest of the turtles, and even the little nicks and everything seen on the front of his shell are different from what we've seen on figures like Leo and Raph. You'll notice he's got his own little unique belt strap there going around his waist that has holsters at either side for his nunchuck weapon. And of course he gets his own unique head sculpt. Now, with Michelangelo being the jokester of the bunch, he does of course get that bright, smiling face there. Even the shape of the eyes and everything are different on this when comparing to the rest of the turtles. And he even has his little signature freckles right there on his cheeks. The figure itself looks very nice. He's very similar to what we see in the Nickelodeon cartoon series. And the paintwork is very nicely done. He's got this nice kind of light, flat green color seen on his skin there. The orange of his bandana is nice and bright, and his eyes are painted with blue pupils there on the inside. And he's got the nice kind of browns that are seen on his wraps around his elbows and his knee pads, and even wrapped around his ankles there, with some nice white wraps going around his hands. So there's a lot of nice variance in all the colors there, and it looks very nice and clean all the way through. So the sculpt looks really nice. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the articulation. The head's on a really nice ball joint, so not only does it look left and right, but it also rocks up and down very nicely because the neck is double jointed both at the top and the bottom there. He's got really great ball joints at the shoulder, so you can get a great range of motion moving the arms upwards, as well as forwards and backwards, and swiveling him right there at that joint. He's got the same great joints at the elbows, and you will notice that they do pop off kind of easy. That is typical for a Revoltech figure, so don't get worried if it pops off. But you can see great range of motion there at the elbows, great swivels there. We've also got swivels at the wrists, so you can rotate it left and right. You can also pivot it up and down there. And each one of the fingers on his hands are individually ball jointed, so you can rotate and close and open all of the fingers on his hand. He's got a nice torso joint there, which again, this is the first time Ninja Turtles figures have ever been able to bend at the torso. You can even rock his upper body around there. He's got really great ball joints at the thighs, so the legs can go outwards, forwards, and backwards, as well as swivel around there, so great range of motion in the upper legs. Really great knee joints as well, very similar to what we saw with the elbows. It's underneath the knee pad, and you can bend them and swivel them. And then we've also got really nice joints at the feet there, ball joints at that ankle, so that way the foot can rotate all the way around. Now, the bandana on the back of his head also has the ability to be posed around, but another thing that's really cool is that the bandana works as a little joystick in sorts that control the eyes on the figure. So when you move the bandana left and right, you actually control his eyes, allowing you to pose the figure with his eyes looking left or looking right, and you can even turn the bandana all the way to one side to completely whiten out his eyes. That way you can get him in that really cool kind of battle-ready stance that we see sometimes in the cartoon series. So that really great articulation on these figures does allow you to pull off some really cool poses. Now, I will say that it does look a little awkward sometimes. When you've got them standing specifically kind of in a neutral pose, all of the ball joints are very noticeable, and it does break up the sculpt some. And it will take a little bit of work sometimes, kind of bending them around and finding the right way to get them standing in the right poses, especially since the joints pop apart so easy. But when you do get them in really cool poses, it's totally worth it, and you can get some really great stances out of these guys. So Michelangelo comes with a slew of accessories, just like we've seen with all of the Revoltech Ninja Turtles. Of course, he comes with his signature weapon in the nunchuck. He gets 2 nunchuck there, and they're both very nicely done. You'll notice that they do have a real metal chain that connects them together, and it's a very fine, small chain. So I would definitely be careful not to kind of bend it around too much, because you wouldn't want to snap that little chain. These are really nice little chucks. But one thing I'm going to point out here, the other weapons that we saw with Leonardo and Raphael had little pegs, and there were holes in their palms of their hands so that you could plug the weapons in a nice snug position. Michelangelo doesn't have that with the nunchucks, so you actually just have to close his fingers around them, and unfortunately the fingers don't really close tight enough, so they're always a little loose in his hands. Now that's not to say that you can't get him to hold on to the chucks, because you can, but it's one of those things that is going to take you some work, and he just doesn't get as tight of a grip as I would like him to. Now, you can get creative, of course, and you can find different ways to pose the chucks, which is always nice. So he can actually hold on to both handles at the same time in one hand, and that actually works a little bit better. Now, I'm going to go back to the little holsters that we have on the side of his belt that I pointed out earlier on. These are kind of neat because this will allow you to holster the chucks when he's not using them, you would think. Let me explain real quick. Now, the holster on his right side is loose enough that the chucks fit in there just fine. So you'll notice it's very easy just to pop those in there. And in fact, it might even be a little too loose because they do kind of fall down a little far. Now, switching over to the holster that's on his left side, something weird's going on. It's a little too tight. In fact, I can't fit the chucks in there at all. And I've tried, believe me, they just don't fit. And the chucks don't have removable parts, because I thought maybe you would have to detach them to plug them in there, but they don't detach. And it's a very stiff, rigid plastic on the belt, so it's not flexible at all. You just can't fit these in the holster on the left side. In fact, I started scratching paint on there because I was doing it too much, so I just stopped. So that's a bit of a bummer. I don't know if that's just a problem with mine, or if that's something that's going to be affecting all of the Michelangelos, but it's definitely a little bit of a letdown. Now, despite the flaws there, and despite the fact that it's a little hard for him to hold on to those nunchucks, you can still pull off some really cool poses. You can get him doing some two-handed holds, you can get them underneath his armpits there for some really cool stances, you can even pull off the little stance where you've got one chuck going over the back of his arm and him holding onto it. So it's pretty neat. You can get some really cool stances that we've never really been able to pull off with very many Michelangelo figures in the past. Now, with those dangling chains, you're going to be pretty limited to different ways you can pose Michelangelo with his nunchucks in battle stances, but this figure comes with a really cool extra accessory that kind of fixes that problem. He's got this really great round plastic disc that is supposed to look like he is swinging one of his nunchucks. It's got an extra handle that has a nice little joint on there that plugs right into the bottom of the disc, and you can even articulate it so that way you can find the right way to put it in his hand. And this looks really cool. So now you can have Michelangelo holding on to this one here, and it looks like he's spinning his nunchuck. And the effect works incredibly well. So this really helps to pull off some very cool battle-ready stances. Now, just like we saw with the other turtles, he also includes an interchangeable head. This one has got a very happy expression on his face, eyes closed, cracking a smile there, and it works really well as far as popping it on in place of the other head. All you gotta do is pop the other head right off the little peg joint there, and you'll even want to remove the back of the bandana, and then plug it into this new head, and then the new head just plugs nice and firm right there onto the peg on the figure. And now we can get some really fun poses of Michelangelo just goofing around and having a good time. And lastly, he does come with a figure stand. Now, it's very similar to what we saw with the others, featuring a New York City sewer lid, and this one here actually has a cool little one-way street sign as the post. Now, instead of this being a stand to actually plug onto his feet, this is actually for aerial poses. There's a little movable peg right there on the top of the post that plugs into a hole that's on the bottom of Mikey's shell. You can then articulate it around and bend it however you need to, so that way you get some really cool aerial poses. You can get them doing handstands, you can get them doing dives. It's a really fun way to just pose the figure around in all these different scenarios, and it works really well. Alright guys, it's comparison time. Here's a look at this brand new Revoltech Michelangelo standing alongside the other two Nick Turtles versions from Playmates Toys. That way you can get a look at how these all differentiate from each other. And just for fun, let's go ahead and stand him alongside some of those other collector turtles that have been released in the past, featuring the NECA comic turtle and the Playmates Classic Collection cartoon Michelangelo and movie Michelangelo. So there you go, my friends. There's a look at the brand new Revoltech Michelangelo figure. I'm still really loving this line because I love how they look. They're very cartoon accurate. These are definitely the best versions of the Nick Turtles we have seen in action figure form, just as far as their looks go. And the extra articulation is very nice to pull off some really cool poses. Now, I did have some more problems with Michelangelo than I did with both Leo and Raph. Specifically the fact that it's really hard to get him to hold on to those nunchucks, and the fact that the holsters are pretty much useless on this figure. But looking past that stuff, you can still pull off some really nice poses, and he just looks really cool when you stand him alongside his brothers. We're really starting to create an awesome looking team of the Ninja Turtles to display on our figure shelves. So one of the other downsides with these is because of the fact that they are imports from Japan, they are going to run you some cash. These guys are selling for upwards of about $60 a figure. But if it's something that you can swing, I definitely feel like they are worth it. They are very cool figures, great articulation, and some really fun accessories. Now you'll probably have to pick these guys up at online stores such as BigBadToyStore.com. So happy hunting, my friends, and until next time.